I think really this is the crux of why people don't build muscle when they go into a growth phase. Lately, I've gotten pretty bold with the consultations that I've done where clients have come to me wanting to start a build phase and who are also concerned about fat gain. I just had a call this week. Girl was like, listen, I'm 13% body fat. I want to gain at the lowest rate of body fat gain that I can, but I want a lot more muscle. I want to do wellness. And within this, I was very honest with her. I was like, listen, fat gain is going to happen. And it will happen regardless of how successful we go about doing this phase. But the ways that we minimize fat gain, it's not going to be through anything other than you adhering to the program and making it your number one priority. The most critical task that you have at hand is getting stronger in the gym and doing everything outside of the gym that optimizes you getting stronger. So that means food, that means recovery, that means sleep, that means watching your step count and making sure you're going into these sessions properly fueled. And that's the thing. I don't like to hold hands with people that are pretty confident in their ability. I do typically want to see what someone can do without micromanaging. And in this case, if someone is very confident that like, hey, I can follow macros, I don't need a strict like meal plan or something that is specific to certain meal timing. Okay, cool. Show me that you can execute responsibly. Show me that you can make reasonable decisions around food that will support your performance. And in that case, cool. I don't need to have my hands in it. You can be an adult, you can be responsible with these choices, but it's at the point that performance starts to slip or you start to complain about like, well, I'm not seeing those strength progressions, yet you are eating in a surplus. Well, that's when we would consider talking about how are you going about executing? How are you hitting these micronutrients? Are you considering other avenues that could be driving up fatigue and when you are utilizing these in order to drive performance? Now, globally, with individuals who want to go into a build, the hardest part for them to wrap their mind around is that I want to see a 12 to 16 week commitment minimally. And it's not to say like, hey, you're going to do it and you're just going to suck it up regardless of what happens. I mean, there are different rates of change in which we will put in place depending on the person's comfortability. But for the person who is more conservative, if we're following a very mild rate of change per week, so less than half a pound per week relative to their average, 12 weeks isn't going to result in much of a shift. But if this is something that someone struggles with out the gate, what I have to explain to them is that you committed to it, but not for a long enough amount of time to see the progress. Like in 6 weeks, maybe at that point we ironed out all of the issues within training. Maybe we started to make incremental performance improvements so that you're able to get under heavier load. But you haven't been doing this long enough to really yield the results that you're hoping for. And frankly, with a build, I would rather have someone overshoot and spend more time in it, assuming body fat allows for that, than them pull out too quickly because they're uncomfortable. I have clients who are very insistent. They want to compete. They know they're undersized. They would like to be in a position where they're actively on stage despite not being as dense as they'd like. Now, even for these clients who are very insistent, like they just want to be on stage, they're okay with making much slower progressions season to season. There's always a debrief and course correcting when we assess how their physique performed on stage. And this is something that it can be very constructive between you and your coach, but if you're self-coached or, you're new to working with your coach, it could be worth broaching like, hey, what are the things that I need to work on personally outside of just having more muscle? What are the things that ultimately held me back from making more progress this season? I think when you look at the wasted times and resources by not course correcting or learning from these mistakes, I mean, you very well could go into another season and do exactly what you did previously, and assuming that it wasn't optimal, it wasn't successful, I mean, you're just going to set yourself up to further waste time, your efforts, potentially impacting your health markers, which it more than likely will if we're talking about contest prep, but also the dietary fatigue that's accumulated for a result that you're not completely satisfied with.